Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I'm Shafiu Suleiman. Thank you very much for staying with us. On Daily Politics, today we're looking at the personality clash, so to speak, between the APC flag bearer and the PDP presidential flag bearer, Atiku Abubakar, in the build-up to 2023 election. And we have in the studio, just like I said, Mr. Paul Ibe, who is a director, Atiku Media Office, and Mr. Jide Ojo, and also joining us via Skype, Shehu Wata. Let me go straight to Mr. Jide Ojo. I'm sure you've been following this development. It started like a joke. At some point they throw banters and what have you. But then it climaxed, with the interview the PDP flag bearer had recently, where he talked about the 2007 and how he declined to accept what he called Muslim ticket as he said the APC flag bearer then wanted him to accept. And then there was also a reaction from the other side of the divide, also saying that the PDP flag bearer is economical with the truth somehow, that that wasn't what transpired. But coming at this time, what do you make up of this personality clash or throwing of tantrums, so some would say?
Thank you very much, Sheffield. Good evening, Nigerians. First and foremost, we should know that this is the season. Mm-hmm. And it comes with the season. It's like when you have a mango, orange, or tomato season.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Every political season comes with this kind of expose, if I can put it that way. I think the two gentlemen, I see it as just mere politicking. It's just about politicking. Most of what they are trying to say about each other are what transpired Nicodemously. Permit my use of that word. It's behind the scene. Right. So when you are not there and
you cannot say precisely.
You cannot say precisely. So it's like a marriage. Usually the usual disputes in marriage. Sometimes when you want to have carnal knowledge of your wife and she denies, maybe a fight ensues and neighbors come around. Both sides will not want to say what led to the fight because they feel it's humiliating. But the truth has to be said that I think we should not just eat up the politics. Muslim, Christian, Muslim is just one of those things that the political gladiators are trying to lash onto in order to gain undue advantage. And that is why, you see even people who will have jumped at such opportunities now demonizing it because it doesn't really favor them now. Yeah. But you also recall that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu did say in Ogun State, if you recall, where Emilokan and Olule, slangs emanated from, that was shortly before, I think, few days to the primaries of APC, where he said, look, he was approached by the incumbent president in 2015 to be his running mate. And when that happened, Saraki, then in APC, said, look, you cannot have a Muslim ticket. That he admitted, and Asiwaju admitted that Saraki threw spanner in his will then, that the president asked him to be his running mate. So the presidency hasn't come out to debunk that offer was ever made.
Even though some also, the presidency will also tell you that it is President Muhammadu Buhari that kick against it, that he can go with a same faith ticket and what have you.
What Asiwaju said himself was that it was Saraki that kicked against it. Meanwhile, even Saraki that kicked against it was already high president of the Senate at that time, and he knew if they fly Muslim tickets, that will work against his own interest because as number 3, they will not want to gamble with not having a Christian.
Yeah.
If the first 2 slots have been picked by Muslims, they thought...
So in a way, he might also be doing it in his own
yeah,
interest.
he was actually doing it to his own advantage.
Right.
And people have asked me, why was Muslim ticket wrong in 2015, but right in 2022? And I simply tell them, in 2014, 2015, APC was in opposition trying to gain power. And it will have been very difficult to sell a Muslim ticket. But now they are in power with 22 governors, on their side.
So
and
they are comfortable.
They felt that the power of incumbency is to their advantage. So by and large, I think we should see the contestation as part of the politicking to outwit, and possibly gain political advantage ahead of 2023.
Okay, Mr. Paul Ibe, looking at because bottom line is the same faith ticket. The PDP and your principal have been lashing on, have been taking, advantage of this situation, some will say. Some say even cry more than the bereaved, so to speak. Why the obsession, around this same faith ticket and leading to all of this altercation?
I don't think we're fixated about, the APC is, and any other political party for that matter, is free. They can play with whatever configuration. The media is making a mountain out of a molehill, and that was not the only issue, in the Arise TV. There were so many.
Yeah, there are a number of issues. We'll talk about
so many of them. And
yes.
But the media, decided to dwell, on this particular one. Like I said, APC is free to choose whatever configuration, and whatever configuration you elect to run with, has consequences. It has a political, it has electoral consequences. So it's up to them, and they have made their choice, and they have to, live with it. But it's not even about, the choice that they make, whether it is Christian or Muslim. No, that's not what it is about. Whatever choice that they make, and whoever it is, has to own the 7 years of the failed APC policy. This is what this is all about. Whoever.
But you're not talking about
Muslim, Christian.
You are more concentrating on, the ticket. Some say perhaps the choice of Kashim Shettima unsettles your camp somehow. You didn't expect such, such a combination. You thought maybe it could have been lesser, than someone like Kashim Shettima. You felt threatened, somehow about your chances in the north.
What I said now, I say for Kashim Shettima or anybody, whoever it is, has to live with. And like they say on social media, they have to own it with their full chest. Whoever it is. It's not about the individual. It's about the reality of the 7 years of the APC administration and what they've been able to make of it. So whoever it is that the party is pushing forward has to own all of that. We know what it is. You don't accept, you haven't been in this country in the last 7 years. Everybody is abreast with what the realities of the 7 years of the APC has been.
Right. Well, before we come back to the realities and how they emerge, because some will say they didn't emerge just in today or in the last 7 years. We'll talk about that. But then, looking at the season and the politicians with their, comments and statements to outreach each other and what have you, the APC camp is also accusing Atiku Abubakar of, like not putting the record straight, that at some point the same Atiku Abubakar was also pushing for a Muslim ticket when he sought to be the running mate, to then let MKO Abiola And even in 2007, as you know, Tinubu said, it was the same Atiku that had wanted him to be his running mate, but he declined, you know, sort of. So who do we believe here? And then they're also talking about desperation, you know, to demarcate or to become president at all costs, you know, not minding the morale, not necessarily looking at, how people are going to react to some of those statements.
Like I said in my prefatory remarks, this is politics. It's the season of politics. This is just the beginning. Campaign has not even started officially. So we will see many more dirty things, unpredictable things, demarketing strategies that will happen. And like I said ab initio, no one was there with them in 1992 during the Jos Convention as to know what actually transpired behind the scene. Abiola is no longer alive to be able to corroborate or debunk what transpired, whether and mark you, even if that happens, is there any law that says you should not lobby? There is no law broken, and it's just I see this as a needless distraction because it is part of politics to lobby. If you don't lobby, sometimes you don't even get what you deserve. You get only what you want and what you go for. And that's why politicians that knows that they cannot even be president will throw their hands into the ring, stake 100 million naira to go and contest an election that they know they cannot win. It's about lobbying, but they know that, look, they will not get the presidency, but if their party is lucky enough to be to produce the next president, maybe they will be in a poor position to be considered as minister.
Thank you very much for staying with us. It's Daily Politics, and the discussion is about to commence. Just like I said, our talking point today is, of course, the deadline for the continuous voter registration exercise by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. We have in the studio right now Senator Rufai Hanga, a former lawmaker and a chieftain of the New Nigeria People's Party, the NNPP. We also thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and hello viewers.
Right. We also appreciate Abdulaziz Suleiman for his appearance on the platform. I think for consecutive the second time now, talking about this very disturbing scenario. Thank you for joining us. Also.
Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. Let's start by looking at the current standing. INEC has substantially increased the figure. Initially, it has recorded around 10 million new registrations, courtesy of this ongoing exercise, and perhaps also with the extension by 30 days. Now we're talking about, well, a little bit above 11 million voters. What do you make up with the turnout of prospective voters, especially across the northern part of the country? Basically, the states that have, the huge numbers. Take for instance Kano, Kaduna, Katsina. What do you make up with the turnout of people so far?
Well, I think the turnout in Kano was very poor due to some factors. Number one, you see, people are reluctant always to do something on time. Anytime there is a timeline for something, let's say 30 days, they'll begin to rush after the 20th or 25th day they always are going for crash program. That is one. Two, we have had problems with the INEC people. Even though INEC was gracious to extend with 1 month up to the end of July. including Saturday and Sunday up to 5 p.m., as they said. But they are gracious to do that. But unfortunately, people in Kano have not had the cooperation they would want to have, because the people registering the public, one, they come late. Two, people are coming en masse. Anytime people come to register, they will tell them to make a list of their names. Now, some people come out at 4 a.m. to be on the queue after making the list. But unfortunately, the government in power will come along, or the representative will come. In the morning, they will tear off the paper of the list earlier made, come up with their own list, and be conveying people, their own political party supporters, they'll be conveying them to the venue. So some of our people are disenchanted. They're impatient, they just walk away, because there are people that really went to do the registration somewhere there at 4 p.m., waited up to 9 a.m. for the INEC officials to come, and when they come, the people was turned off. So naturally, what do you do? They went away. This happened severally. And we have a problem of definitely some people that don't care attitude. And there is poor, even though I had one INEC official said they spent billions in voter education. Yes, they do. We appreciate that. The parties too, they have a responsibility to educate the public on this kind of thing. The parties are doing it every now and then, especially in the north, in Kano, where we mostly rely on transistor radio rather than social media or newspapers. People are always on radio stations calling for people to come out and register and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, people don't, because of this kind of attitude from the INEC officials and from the manipulations from the government. That is, I think, one of the factors that hindered the registration in Kano, so far as I know. I think that's some of the things.
Suleiman, a combination of factors here, talking about attitude, which is one of the critical issues we identified earlier on. Yeah. Nigerians generally, have this attitude of last-minute rush and what have you. Again, we're beginning, but then one new challenge, that Senator has told us has to do perhaps with the not just the INEC officials here, but those in power, so to speak. This attitude of until you know somebody who knows somebody and all of that. Favoritism, so to speak. So it is not just. The people have expressed some level of enthusiasm, coming out to register, perhaps as a result of the calls and the awareness that is being created, but their hopes are dashed, as a result of some of these factors. How do you, you also been observing the trend, how prevalent is this across board?
We've had quite a number of stories to do with the two factors the Senator has mentioned. In some places, we've had reports that the electronic machines don't function. That's in northern rural areas, which also informed why we called. We insisted that the date should be extended for INEC to take care of those lapses. And we've also had of, though we've not really independently confirmed it, of INEC officials frustrating efforts in the north to get people registered.
How did we?
Like I said, we've not confirmed it. There are reports.
Yeah, perhaps the reports would indicate why and how that happens.
Yeah, that quite a lot of perhaps the people who carry out the exercise might not be from the north, or their supervisors may not be from the north, so they deliberately frustrate some communities in northern Nigeria. That's the report we've had. but we've not had the time to verify because the sense of necessity now, the sense of urgency now has shifted to just talking to people, getting people to come out.
But as a Northern interest group, perhaps you know, very interested in seeing that the people, you know, of here of not, you know, are not shortchanged. Some would expect perhaps you have representatives across the state to monitor the exercise, and of course also engage the officials, you know, to ensure that the exercise is up and running. Is it a lapses on your own part? You know,
you see, that is just one of the many factors. The primary factor, like I told you the other time, is that people themselves, the larger population of northern community, is frustrated with the failure of government. People are angry. So if people, I mean, people who come out reluctantly may not even have to bother whether they are allowed to register or not. And you can see some communities have even been dispersed. A large section of Nigeria, northern Nigerian community has been dispersed. And people are also living in fear and uncertainty. So really, I don't think it's about an individual. It's about the system failure. The system has failed to meet the incredible expectations it ignited in the people before the 2015 elections.
Well, okay, Senator, yeah, looking at, because, you know, this registration is going on across, you know, the 30 states of the Federation. And we are seeing the level of, you know, turnout of people in other parts of the country, even here in Abuja. We witness, you know, where, you know, at some of the registration centers, you find, you know, people, you know, turning out en masse and even overwhelming the INEC officials, and then also showing some level of resilience, you know, staying the whole day. Some people would even stay in the queue up till, you know, through the night to ensure that they get their PVCs. But else, here we're talking about people level of
awareness.
Yes, some lethargic kind of attitude, you know, towards this exercise. Is it that we haven't, you know, created the level, I mean, enough awareness to the people to understand that this is a fundamental right that shouldn't be neglected, and also looking at, you know, the current scenario in the country, the yearnings, you know, for credible leadership and what have you. People should take this very, I mean, important so that they can exercise their franchise.
Well, maybe, but I think what I said and what he said, I mean, the reasons are the combination of both what he has said and what I have said, because what I said is from practical experience. I have two sets of twins that have come of age. When last month, I think they came of age. They were supposed to have registered. They did not register. They were this ASU forced holiday. So unfortunately. So they were here in Abuja with some relatives. So I had to force them to go back to Kano and register. And that's why I'm telling you this from practical experience. And I insisted that they must register. I was here. They kept to inform me that, Baba, we went, but we can't register because we have been there in the morning, out about 2 p.m. I said, it's not enough. See people spending the whole night on the queue here. Now go back and do it. They have to do it. They went the following day. They said, okay, they gave them sheets of paper. Please let everybody put his name.
Thank you for staying with us on Daily Politics. And today our talking point is the ASU federal government face up and an ending strike. And now let's go straight into the discussion. Comrade Haruna, you know, 5 months and still counting, so to speak. Students at the tertiary level have been at home, you know. Universities have been shut down as a result of this prolonged strike, which was entered by the Academic Staff Union of universities across the country. And after a series of negotiations, series of meetings between the federal government and ASU, there hasn't been any substantial progress, so to speak. It has to, culminate into this street protests and, of course, threats of impending strike nationwide. Why does it have to go this way?
Well, thank you very much. But I think first thing first, there is need for us to put the issue on a proper perspective. It is not only ASU that is on strike. All the all the four university-based unions are on strike.
Right. The
ASU, SANU, NASU, and NAT.
That's right.
And I'm surprised at the emphasis on ASU.
Well, that's the umbrella, if you like.
Well, it's not an umbrella. It's just a segment of the university community made up of teaching staff. And they directly deal with the students.
That's right.
But
and they're also at the forefront of the negotiation.
No.
Okay.
There is, let me just give you a historical background.
Right.
The federal government of Nigeria in 2009 entered into agreement with the four university-based unions.
That's right.
As listed above, ASU, SANU, NASU, and NAT. And that in the agreement, there is a portion that stated clearly that this agreement is to be renegotiated after every 3 years.
That's right.
And if you look between 2009 and now, it's about 13 years. And we have had no successful renegotiation. Between that period and now, about 3 committees, were formed by the government to renegotiate this same document with the 4 university-based unions.
Why renegotiation before you go further?
Renegotiation means you sit down, do an appraisal of the status of what you had agreed upon. The agreement is basically segmented into 2. Conditions of service, and then where it has to do with financials, salaries and allowances. So we are an evolving society, and the world is dynamic. Therefore, there is nothing that is static. Now, collectively bargained agreements are supposed to be looked upon with a view to seeing whether there was need to continue with the agreements, whether there was need to upscale it or downscale it, as the case may be.
So it is provided,
it
is basic.
Yeah, it is there in the agreement, and both government and the unions agreed on that, and they have signed.
That's right.
Now, from 2009 until 2017 or so, there was no effort by government to show semblance of trying to. And we are all Nigerians. And you know that lives of our members is at stake, from the economy to the physical environment. Now, within that period, attempts were made after some pushings by the unions. There was the Wale Babalakin committee that started the renegotiation with the 4 university-based unions. They went as far as agreeing on some issues, but it was not conclusive before government disbanded the committee. Then there came the Munzali Jibril committee that also came and decided to only negotiate with ASU. It didn't have the opportunity. It left out the other 3 unions. That committee's recommendation for ASU was also rejected by this government. This gave birth to the Nimi Briggs committee. And the Nimi Briggs committee was given a timeline of 3 months to fast track and renegotiate these provisions in with the 4 university-based unions. And that committee met with all the 4 unions. But for us in the non-teaching cadre, the 3 unions, NASU, SANU, and NAT, we were only opportune to meet with that committee only 2 times in the last 7 months. And that committee had met with ASU for upward up to about 8 or 9 times.
Why the exclusion now?
Well, these are some of the complaints we have been making. We have been trying to draw the attention of government and even the committee itself. But at every point we made efforts, the committee will say that you don't worry, especially issues surrounding financials, salaries and allowances. They said they didn't have the mandate of their principals, meaning the government, to discuss such financials with us. In the meantime, we have read in the media that they had already concluded agreements with ASU to the extent of even proposing a salary review of about of a percentage.
Yeah. I think 100% or so. Yeah.
So for us, we felt that was a betrayal, and that they were probably trying to shortchange the non-teaching staff. And we felt that we should raise our voices. So in the meantime, while these things were going on, and we have had different meetings with different government organs under the umbrella of, the conciliator, who is the Minister of Labor. We have had occasions where we met and agreed on certain issues, and we had signed MOUs and MOS, Memorandum of Understanding, Memorandums of Action, and he had been able to bring, within that period, government agencies that were interfacing with us or that had something to do directly with our plight. And some progress were made, to be fair. Some progress were made. But the major issues, the major crux was the inconsistencies in the IPPIS payment platform.
Okay.
Which also happens to be in all the unions.
Yeah.
Demand.
We'll talk about the disagreement over the IPPIS. But then, somewhat true. We happen to be, in the middle of all of this. Perhaps you interface with both the government and the labor unions. And based on what Comrade, Haruna has told us, this is a protracted kind of situation. It has even surpassed, or it has gone beyond a particular government. It started long ago, cut across the Jonathan administration, and so on and so forth. What do you make up with the commitment on the two sides of the divide, to arrive at that amicable resolution, the sincerity of purpose between these two parties?
Good evening, Nigerians. Like the comrade Adela said, the issues are actually enormous. We journalists, we are not supposed to take side with any of the parties.
That's right.
So what we are supposed to do is that we are supposed to be in the middle while we are canvassing or while we are advocating for the masses. Our own is the masses. Even if it is not...
Those bearing the brunt.
Yes. Even we may say that we are not concerned. We are also directly involved by the actions of both parties. But before I move forward, let me say that tomorrow we'll get more elaborate messages from the government side, because I would have loved if the government representative is in this studio this night analyzing or trying to bring out the issues to Nigerians. Yeah. But I want to assure Nigerians that this kind of message will be brought tomorrow, because the Minister of Labor and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngigi, had invited journalists for a media briefing tomorrow. We wouldn't know what we don't want to preempt what he will say tomorrow, but we know that it's not averse to resolving the issues.
The reason why I ask this question, I understand, over time there has been this trust deficit between the federal government and ASU.
That's where I'm going to.
Yes. There seems not to be trust. I mean, there's some level of disconnect in terms of the trust among these two parties. While ASU is accusing the government of not, showing enough commitment to address the issues. I know federal government is also looking at, accusing the labor union of prolonging, the strike unnecessarily, because there were certain interventions that were made. But let me put it to Comrade Haruna. The negotiation, the agreement that was entered into in 2009 was not actually involved, I mean, does not involve this current administration. But the fact that government is continuum, certainly the government has to take, whatever burden that is therein. And then some say, the projection, if you like, or the commitment was that enormous. We're talking about monies into trillions of naira. Some point, I think 1.5 trillion naira, continuously for 3 years, 2010, 2009, 2010, 2011. Now, did the unions also put into consideration the fact that, what they are asking for perhaps might not be realistic looking at the prevailing conditions?
Well, I'm happy you are a journalist, and it is expected that you should know something about everything. Well, meaning that the issues of economy of Nigeria should not be anything new to you. The problem of Nigeria, when people keep saying there's no money, I don't believe them.
Thank you very much for staying with us. It's daily politics, and the discussions about to commence. Just like I said, our talking point today is, of course, looking at security development in Nigeria. Let me start with you, retired general. Looking at the current situation in the country, we were here some days ago, to talk about this same problem, talking about security. But then, between then and now, there has been some developments that have generated a lot of concerns among Nigerians. One in particular is, of course, the recent attack on our troops of the Guards of Brigade, the brigade guards here in Abuja, who were ambushed, by some terrorist groups, along Buhari general area. Unfortunately, there are casualties, So Nigerians are beginning to worry, especially residents of Abuja, looking at the sequence of these attacks. First, it was Kuje, and now we're talking about our last line of defense, so to speak. Why is the security situation degenerating?
Well, I can understand the concern and apprehension of all well-meaning Nigerians, particularly those residing in the Federal Capital Territory, based on the fact that the recent happenings are, unpalatable, so to speak, starting with the attack on the Correctional Service Center in Kuje, and now, most unfortunately, the casualty we sustained in Buhari local government area of the FCT. People rightly, they have every reason to be worried. More so, this is the seat of the government, and you thought that everything, when you talk about security, when you talk about the Federal Capital Territory, it ought to have been more scared than any other place. But of course, at the same time, again, it is not surprising given the fact, and I made mention of it, thankfully you made mention of the fact that we were here some time ago, and suffice to reiterate what we have been saying over time. Some of these things, yes, are not surprising simply because there are certain issues that need to be tackled that have not been tackled, and will continue to experience these problems. I talked about coordination. I talked about, synergy. And beyond that, again, every time we had security challenges, we only think of one thing, deploying the military. Don't we have other, component of the security architecture? And beyond that, again, everything that we are experiencing hinge on the issue of good governance in this country. To what extent have we been addressing the good governance? Yes, because you cannot talk, every day we talk about security being a collective responsibility, everybody has a role to play. But have you empowered the people to play that role? These are the issues that we have to look at. Because if we have been doing that, some of these issues wouldn't have, degenerated to this extent. And even, yes, there is no society that is crime-free, but as soon as it happened, you know, it can easily be nipped in the bud because everybody is,
We have
you
to
know,
rally around.
yeah, on it. So basically, this is the issue. But you know, the security education. Then, to what extent have you, you know, empowered the Nigerian people, you know, to perform that duty aside the security? I mean, those statutory responsible for the security, you know, of the country or any given community or society.
Yeah, looking at these recent attacks, three of them specifically, you know, some would say are targeted at a message, for instance. You know, the issue of insecurity has been a regular occurrence in some states of the Federation, especially in the Northwest. You know, it is no longer news to hear about you know, in large numbers, you know, killings and displacement of, you know, rural communities and what have you. But these three attacks, you know, the Kuje facility, the advanced convoy of President Muhammadu Buhari, and now the troops of the, you know, Brigades of Guard, some say are sending some strong signal to the seat of power that we are here and we are also very important. Do you see this message sinking with our authorities?
Well, given the response, you begin to wonder actually whether it is sinking or not. But the truth is that I think the problem we have to a large extent is that of communication gap. Yes, because I say communication gap because things are being done, but people hardly know what is being done. And I think within the, you know, security concern, there are some issues that need to be made to the public, I mean, so that they will be aware. Because an enlightened society is easier to help, you know, in securing the society or the nation as it is. And at the same time, people will contribute more. But where you decide to keep quiet, take for instance, these things that have happened, it took such a long time when there was an official response, and it shouldn't be. So these are the issues and the circumstances that brought about these security challenges. And I always like to place any of the occurrence in the context that it has occurred. But if you lack the information, you hardly know. Because I will give you an example. There was a time when somebody raised concern that, you know, bandits, you know, stopped motorists. No, somebody was, you know, abducted along Kaduna-Abuja Road. And I was asking where, when, you know. So, but as time goes on, the story came that it was 8 o'clock in the night. And naturally, every right-thinking person, unless if you are you have supernatural powers,
especially
you cannot.
Especially in this contemporary
So,
situation we find ourselves.
yes, but that
before
is not
it was the right, you know, it was even about the best time to
normally
travel.
you take dinner before you even think of traveling.
That's right.
So basically, these are some of the things, and you know, and almost everybody has a role to play, you know, putting the story in a proper perspective as it happened. And but that is even for the public.
Right.
But for those that are the security agencies, particularly the intelligence community, you know, to what extent are feeding the information so that it is being sieved for the public to take action and for the other security agencies or members of the security architecture should take action. So basically, these are the issues.
Right.
When you understand that, sometimes the level of apprehension could be less.
That's right.
And a lot of people have ideas they could have contributed so that some of these issues could be mitigated. Because, look, the greatest rallying point or selling point of the Nigerian society is the human resource that it has. It's incredible. People are full of ideas. We are the best if you can think. I mean, you can think of in this world.
That's right.
But of course, you cannot get the best out of the people unless certain people are in place.
Right. Okay, let's reach out to Bulama Bukarti. Bulama, looking at the situation we find ourselves today in Nigeria, some are beginning to think that we're losing the war, if you like. We're losing the fight to these non-state actors, especially now that they're being emboldened and, of course, you know, taking certain, I mean, attacks, you know, directly to the seat of power. Recently, they also made a threat, to even kidnap the president and governor of Kaduna State. Some say they are being emboldened, perhaps, by the level of response they're getting from the government, and of course, their ability also to extort Nigerians to, because they are also milking millions of naira out of Nigerians. How would you respond to this situation?
I think it is right to say that the security situation in Nigeria is unfortunately deteriorating by the day. And we could look at incidents like the Abuja or Kuje attack or the other attacks we saw recently in Abuja and attempted attacks. But even when you look at the broader trend and pattern, you would see that this year is already becoming the deadliest year in the past 10 years. I know Kabiru Adamu would come, but he wouldn't mind me mention the figures. I was just coming from a workshop organized by his company, and the data they gathered shows that 6,698 Nigerians have been killed in the first 6 months of this year alone. And this is something I know Daily Trust has also reported on. If you looked at 6,698 people, that is over 1,116 people every single month. That's over 37 people every day. 37 people is 2-seater buses. The amount of people 18-seater buses accommodate are killed every single day in Nigeria, and 82% of this is in the northern part of Nigeria. Now, of course, there are other things the statistics show, and we can get to them when we have time. But to get to your question, there are two parts to why we are seeing this escalation. The first part is what you have alluded to, which is that the terrorists, the criminals, are still able to recruit. They are able to make a lot of money, and they are able to get all their supplies and logistics. Their arms and ammunitions are flooding in through the border without any problem. They are making money from ransom. The Abuja Kaduna attackers, according to Daily Trust reporting, have so far made 900 million naira. That's what we know of the 8 passengers that they released. We don't know how much was paid for the other passengers that were also released. So you could be right to say they have made almost 1 billion naira in just one operation, and they have not released over up to a half of those they abducted. So they are able to make money. Their weapons are flooding in. Their drugs are flooding in. Their food is clear, and therefore they are emboldened to continue. And that's why we see Boko Haram expanding, bandits expanding, and IPOB continuing its attack in the southeast. This is one part. The second part, which is emboldening them, is the fact that the government is totally. And if you want me to summarize the problem with Nigeria's security in 2 words, I would say leadership failure. If you want me to make it 3 words, I will say woeful leadership failure. Because the president is not providing the leadership that is needed. Now, Nigeria has 17 security and law enforcement agencies, but there is no one coordinating them. There is no strategy coordinating them, and therefore everyone is doing things on their own. And so you don't have leadership, no plan, no coordination, and therefore the situation continues to worsen, unfortunately.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Now, let's kick off the discussion. Prof, what exactly is happening?
Ibrahim, you can ask that question again. What exactly is happening?
Because we all want to know what is happening. We just saw the back. We just gave a background of how things were and how rapidly they have deteriorated.
You even taking off from your background there. Why was it that in 1980, for example, the naira was almost at par with the dollar? And today we have seen the naira exchanging for as high as 700 naira, at least in the parallel market. Exactly. Even if we use the official market, 430, to the dollar. Okay, why was it? Well, why is it so? It's important to recognize that exchange rate is nothing but the price of foreign currency. So if we say the exchange rate of the naira to the dollar is this. It is simply the rate at which we are exchanging for the dollar. So it is the price of the dollar.
Okay.
And what determines price essentially is demand and supply, forces. That's what determines price.
Okay.
And for us here in Nigeria, unfortunately, the naira has suffered from the simultaneous impact of low supply and high demand. If you take demand, for example, Ibrahim, you and I know, you mentioned 1980. You and I know that in 1980, you can say about 75% of the cars that were driven in Nigeria were produced, assembled in Nigeria. Volkswagen, we had Peugeot in Kaduna. Okay, that is no longer the case. Today, 99% of cars driven here are imported. Okay, take even what we are wearing, clothes, for example. 1980, most of what we wear, what was worn at the time, locally produced. Today, where are the textile factories? There are no more. We had in Funtua, we had in Kano, we had in Kaduna, we had in Aba, and the rest of them. They've all gone. So you now realize that the demand for forex is on the high side.
What can be attributed to the death of this industry that you just talked about, and before you go forth? What can be attributed to that? Because we've talked about the textiles, the assembly plants.
Yes.
I thought these things were supposed to progress and improve.
Exactly.
Why the rapid disappearance?
Policy failures, over time. No deliberate, intention to even encourage those industries, encourage those companies. When you have a harsh business environment, coupled with the fact, as I said earlier on, there wasn't any deliberate policy, to really incentivize them. Okay. Take for example the issue of cars, as I talked about. I said majority now imported. If the government over time, were patronizing locally made cars. Okay, if government and the Nigerians too were patronizing locally made products, that wouldn't be the case. Of course, they folded up because maybe they had issues with getting raw materials for firms, okay, or the demand was not even there. Now, if you take the case of Invisibles, between 1998 and 2018. Okay, if you look at the record from the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, it says that the number of Nigerians that were abroad, okay, studying abroad, fewer than 15,000. Today, it is nearly 100,000 Nigerians studying abroad. Okay, so you can see the impact of that on the forex, and that takes a whole chunk. We understand that between 2010 and 2020, the forex demand for foreign education, is in the region of $29 billion. You take medical tourism again. Now, medical tourism costs as much as $1 billion every year. So over a 10-year period, you have about 10 billion. Exactly. So if you take medical tourism and education abroad, you have about $40 billion spent just over a 10-year period, and that's the equivalent of the current external reserves, that we have now. Okay. So, are you talking about, Invisibles? I've talked about Invisibles, import of cars, the issue of even, the textiles and so on. So you now find that when it comes to demand, the demand has really increased. Okay. Import bills. Our import bill, used to be as low as, there was a time it was maybe $16 billion. Today, import bill is, you can check, as of 2019, okay, gone as high as $55 billion. All right. You made it that's even on the demand side. Okay. On the supply side, we're also having the same, I say simultaneous. Over 90% of our forex comes from just sale of crude oil. Exactly. And if you have a situation in which your forex earnings, has dwindled over time, of course, you're also bound to have this imbalance in demand supply of forex, which will of course lead to the fall of the naira.
All right.
Yes.
Well, you made a very interesting point there, and one of the things that I actually picked up on was you mentioned policy. Yes. The good thing about it is I have a policy analyst right here in the studio. Doctor, Where did we get it wrong?
Well, I think the Prof has certainly said it. We got it wrong for what I call policy somersault.
Okay.
You know, we were not consistent with, you know, policy that really, you know, made sense for the country. You know, subsequent regimes, you know, came into existence, and some brought in policies that were not friendly to the people, like you know, privatization. You know, during that period where we took loan from the IMF and all kinds of policies, you know, rammed into Nigerian political setting.
We were told privatization, we were sold privatization as a good thing.
Well, privatization, in the true sense of it, with the way it works in developing economies, and it's not the way it works in Nigeria.
Okay.
Like the only country that is making wave, you know, in terms of privatization is like Rwanda, because Rwanda, like the Prof said one thing about deliberate policy. You know, if a country must survive, it must hinge its survival on what I call deliberate policy. That you must decide that this is how you're going, this is what you want, and this is what you tend to achieve. So our policy formulators at different, you know, different times, it didn't have what I call consistent policy that is set out for a long time, because policy is either a long time project, or it's a short time project or a mid-time project. So they were doing somersault policies, or just come change this regime, decide to do another thing. So Nigeria was like, you know, let's do this and see how it works. So like he rightly said, everything he said about the foreign exchange, you know, because we're a country that's so crazy about everything foreign. Yeah. So we didn't diversify economy when we were really producing oil, because oil is our mainstay. It's about 90% of what we get generated comes from oil. So we didn't think of, you know, sustaining the agricultural sector and also sustaining other sector, because the global world, the global economy today is a multi-sectoral thing. You don't depend on one particular, you know, aspect of you know, revenue to survive. So like what has happened today in the war going on in Ukraine and Russia has also become another looking wars. You know, countries in Europe are beginning to look for alternative, you know, concerning energy and other production of food.